All right, what's up? How's everybody doing tonight? Back it up a little bit. How's everybody doing? Welcome to YouTube Guitar Tricks live lesson Friday nights. Let me know you're out there with comments. If you expand the description below here, there is some accompaniment. Hey, Elias, good to see you again. We've got some supplementary material, let's put it that way, a PDF of some of the things I'm going to go over tonight, and hopefully gain a little more understanding of maybe what we need to be thinking about to unlock the fretboard just a little bit and understand scales a little bit better, okay? We'll be back next Friday with one of my guitar workouts, so we'll do a lot more playing then. But I think it is this could be something you could take away something on this. And listen, we're gonna, for all you beginners out there or guitar players that don't know much about theory, this might be a little bit dry discussion, or maybe it might get a little bit crazy. But just do your best to follow along, and as you continue in your guitar journey, your guitar playing journey, you're going to make these connections as you go. Okay, we got lots of first time tuners in, so I super appreciate you guys hanging out. Excellent. Dree, Jerry, and Jamie, and Joe. Excellent. Fred. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I super appreciate you guys. Appreciate you all tuning in tonight. And MK Micah Melt. I'm not sure what your name is, but MKA Melt. That's what I'm going to go with. Hello again. Yes. Okay. So if you download this PDF that's in the description, once again, there's a link to download a PDF because I'm going to talk about some stuff that helps to kind of have something to look at, as well as I will describe it on the fretboard. So here's the thing. First of all, understanding the fretboard a little bit. Seth, what's up? Welcome. I appreciate you joining tonight. All right, Jim is in the house from Canada. Hope it's a little bit warmer up there. Welcome. To understand the fretboard, what we first need to realize is that on the fretboard, it's a unique instrument because we can have the same pitch, the very same note in several locations across 6 strings across the fretboard. You know what I mean by that is this A note, for example, is also available here, and it's also available here, and it's also available here. Okay, so Brian, what's up from Canada? Welcome as well. Good to see some Canada representing tonight. Excellent. So it's different than the piano. Okay, Dan, welcome. That's awesome. Good to hear Canada. It's t-shirt weather now when it gets above freezing in the winter. So there you go. In a piano, there's only one spot for that pitch. There's only one spot for that A note on the piano, one key. On a guitar, you've got a lot of options here. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to think about the notes on the fretboard, and it can kind of be a little bit overwhelming at first. So this is just one way to sort of try and get it straight in your mind and start to understand how the notes spread out across the fretboard. And that idea is what is known as intervals. Okay, James, welcome from Syracuse. Awesome. Okay, so intervals are simply just the distance from one note to another. Okay, and we have names for these intervals. And basically, you have from octave to octave, right? There are 12 notes, okay? 12 possible notes. And it's really easy on the fretboard. Rick Sticks. All right. Welcome from Ottawa. Excellent. Cool. So every 12 frets, it repeats. We have unique notes going up from an open string all the way up to the 12th fret. you've got 12 possible notes, okay? And we can think of these in terms of the note names, right? Like E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, right? The musical alphabet. But the other way to think of it, which is really helpful in understanding scales and understanding scale patterns and how chords are built, is to think about the interval name of these notes. Okay, so if you refer to the handout, Terry, what's up from Vegas? David from North Carolina, excellent. Welcome, everybody. So one way to, so if you look at the PDF, just if you expand the description behind here, below here, and open up that PDF, download it, open it up. Okay, the first graphic you will see, courtesy of yourguitarbrain.com. This is the best representation that I found for how I like to think of things, is let's think about an E note. So just for the sake of, let's just talk about the low E string. And so that would be 0. That would be on the left-hand side of that fretboard diagram where it says the root or 0, okay? And we have what are known as half steps or semitones as we go up each fret. Now we have names for each of these possible intervals. And what we mean by intervals is simply the distance between the root note. In this case, it's just going to be this open E string. So just an E note in this example, okay? But the distance between that and any other note up the fretboard to the 12th fret is what's known as an interval. We have a name for that can be used in any key. Okay, so we're not going to use the alphabetical names, the musical alphabet. We're going to use these names, and it's listed underneath. You will see this, the number, the semitone distance in the second graphic, and the name of these intervals. Okay, so I've got an E note. That is the root. If I just go up one fret, one semitone, that is known as your minor second. Okay, that's a minor second distance between the root and one fret up. Okay. Now, if I go 2 frets up from the root, so here's the root, I land on the 2nd fret. That is a major second away from the root. Okay. So if we keep doing that all the way up the fretboard, as you follow the list of this, we've got root, minor second, major second, then the minor third, 3 frets away, or 3 semitones from the root. That's the minor third. Major third is 4 semitones away from the root. Okay. Then we've got the perfect fourth, which is 5 semitones away. So the 5th fret here against an open string. You've got what's known as a perfect fourth. So notice this, you've got a second. There are 2 different seconds intervals. One is major and one is minor, right? Here's the major, here's the minor. A lot of times we just shorthand this. So the second, for example, a major second, if you just hear the word, well, it's a second interval, that is assumed to be a major second. So the more crucial one to describe a second, that's this one, is that it's a minor second or that it's a flat second, okay? A flat 2. That's sort of the shorthand we use as musicians. That's the flat 2, that's the 2, okay? Here's the flat 3, there's the 3. But fully understanding what's going on, you've got a minor second, major second, minor third, major third, okay? So, and keep in mind, this is all just comparing a distance from a root. My root is the open string, it's E, okay? I've got these intervals. Now it starts to change a little bit. I get to the 5th fret, that's your perfect fourth. Okay, so there's something a little bit different going on in the middle, like right in the center, in between the octave, basically. Remember, 12th fret is another E note, that's an octave up, okay? So in between here, 5th and 7th fret, we've got perfect fourth, the flat 5 or the tritone, and the fifth. Okay, perfect fifth. So perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and in between it's either the sharp 4 or the flat 5 or the tritone. Alan, good question. So is the root also called unison? It's only a unison if you're 0 semitones apart. Okay, so for example, I would have to use this example. Here's an E note, and here's another E note. So I've got the 7th fret of the A string, and I've got the 7th fret of the D string. Okay, the distance between those two notes is 0 semitones. It's the same pitch. So that's a unison note. Okay. Another example on this is if I go like this. Some of you know that you can tune the guitar in fourths, right? So here's an A note, 5th fret of the low string. It's also the exact same pitch as the open A string. When I play those two notes together and I want to know the interval between them, it's 0. So that's called a unison, right? I'm comparing the distance between two notes. And so the distance between two notes is a unison. But if we're just comparing two notes, those two notes have a name. The first one is the root. The second one is the distance from the root. Okay, and sometimes that distance can be 0. And in that case, that interval is called a unison. So it's not another name for a root note. It's just the name for the interval between two notes that are at the same pitch. Okay, hopefully that helps. So let's get back here. We've got the perfect fourth, perfect fifth. Okay, and these are called perfect intervals because when you play them against the root, for example, I'm going to go up a little bit higher so you can hear this, but an E and an A is a fourth. When you hear them played together, there's something about the way those frequencies complement each other where it sounds rather even, right? Whereas if I change the interval a little bit, like that's a flat third interval, okay? It has like a color to it. It has a rub. It kind of like, you can hear it kind of waver a little bit. Whereas this particular interval sounds very kind of together. It's a lot more resonant. Same with the fifth, and this is where you get the power chord. If you have a root and a fifth, they call it the perfect fifth, but there's something about the way that those two notes resonate together that sounds very even, very together. Okay? Brian's got a question. When you play the low E, the next is F, which is a major note. How can it be a minor? Right now we're just talking about intervals, okay? An interval is just simply what we call the distance between one note and another note, okay? So a note that is just one semitone apart is known as a minor second, okay? So that's just how we name the intervals, okay? Your statement about the next note is F, which is a major note, that's not always the case, right? Like, for example, if I'm playing in the key of D minor, here's a D note, and if I go up to an F, that's 3 frets up. So in this case, the interval, F is an interval that is 3 semitones up, and if you look at the chart, it's a minor third above. Okay, so that's part of a minor key, actually, like a D minor scale. That formula has a minor third in it. In this case, it's F. So F can be a minor note too. It just depends on what key you're in. All right. Right now, this is just a general discussion of how we name all of these unique individual notes. All the way up, the 12 notes, all the way up to the octave. Why is the tritone important in the blues? I will talk about that, Mr. MKA Melt. I will talk about that in a little bit. Seems like the semitones are the steps 1 through 12 away from the root. Each semitone steps has a name in the chart. Correct. Okay, so we're always comparing what the note is compared to the root. That's the important thing. It's always a distance between the root note, which I've just arbitrarily chosen at this for this example as E. Okay, but I'm going to show you, once I've gone through everything, I'll show you how that works with other root notes. Okay, so let's go back to E for a sec. I'm talking about the perfect fourth, perfect fifth. All right, Sophia's asking again, why it's called minor 2 if the note is not minor? It is a minor 2. Distance. It's a flat 2. Okay. Now, that may not be in the minor scale, but we're not talking about scales right now. Okay. I'm just talking about distances. I'm just talking about the actual intervals. Okay. The interval is just simply the distance between a root note and another note. And we have names for each of these notes as you go all the way up to the octave. Okay. And some of them are minor, and some of them are major, and some of them are perfect. Okay. So I just want to, I don't think I can make this distinction enough. We're not talking about scales right now. We're not talking about chords. I'm just simply talking about the interval, the distance between each of these notes from a root note. Okay. When we start getting into scales, there's a formula that happens, as you'll see at the bottom of the handout. There's a formula where we pick these intervals to make up a scale. And they're all different depending on what scale you want to have. Okay. Exactly, Alan. You've got it. You've got it. Okay. So from F major to F sharp major, there is a minor second. No, Sophia, I'm not talking about chords. You're talking about chords. I'm just talking about a single note. Okay. From F to F sharp, that is a minor second. But there is no F major to F sharp major. I'm not talking about chords. I'm just talking about a note. Okay. The distance between F and F sharp, because now you're asking the distance from F. So I'm going to make that the root. Okay. 1 fret away is F sharp. So what is that interval? That interval is a minor second. Okay. You can just look at the chart and see that. Okay. Going through the chart, we're going to keep going from the perfect fifth. Okay. That's seven semitones away. 7 frets. You're all good, Sophia. Always asking the good questions. Okay. Now, from the perfect fifth, we're getting into 6th intervals away. And once again, now we've got either a minor 6th or a major 6th interval. Okay, so as you go up, 8 frets away from the root, that's a flat 6 or a minor 6th interval. Then there's the major 6th interval or just a 6th. Okay, 10 frets away or 10 semitones away from the root is your flat 7 or your minor 7th. 11 frets away is the major 7th or the 7th, and then boom, 12 frets away is the exact same note up an octave. That's your root note up an octave, the octave. Okay, sometimes they call that the perfect octave. Okay. So now that I've gone through it, I'm going to switch the root note to C. Now I'm on the 3rd fret of the A string. What's the distance? What's the interval between this note and a D? Does anybody know? What is the interval? My root note is C and my other note is D. What is the distance between those two notes? Major second. Exactly. It's a second apart. Okay. All right. So excellent. Good. Everybody got it. Looking great. Everybody, thank you. Okay. Now, let's relate it to the fretboard a little bit, because I mentioned before, fretboard's not like a piano where there's just one spot for each pitch. There's a number of different spots. So we've already mapped out with the first two with the first two charts, we've mapped it all out on one string, okay? And just for ease of going up the frets and knowing how many frets apart everything is, how many semitones everything is, what those distances are across one fret. But what's really helpful as a guitar player is to know some of the shapes moving up the strings, okay? So I'm going to go now to a C note here, 8th fret of the low string. Here's a C note, okay? Now, the distance between the C and the C sharp, or the D flat, both are enharmonic names, okay? Once again, I'm just talking about intervals. Thank you, Christopher, for jumping in. Welcome, sir, for hanging out. Appreciate it. Minor second, 2 frets apart. Yes, Alan, we got it. Major second, 3 frets apart. Now we got my pinky going. There's your flat third or minor third. Now, also what can happen is that you've got that same minor third note here on the 6th fret of the A string. Okay? Same note. Jamie, you're very kind. Okay? This is really important. This is another way to just think about the fretboard and learn the fretboard and know where these intervals are, because as you start to use scales, you can think of those scale formulas as all the intervals in the scale and know where those shapes are, okay? If I'm on a C and I want to know where the minor third is from away from the C, well, on the same string, it's 3 frets apart, but it turns out that you can grab it 2 frets down on the next string, okay? Major third is just 1 fret down on the next string. The perfect fourth, and here we are getting into the Guitar Tricks Fundamentals course, the magic L, right? Same fret, next string is your 4. Same 2 frets up on the next string is your 5th. That's the magic L we talk about. Okay? So to learn where these intervals are across the strings is super powerful as well. It gets you around a little bit, and you'll start to see this in action when you start to learn scale patterns, okay? So I encourage you to understand that chart at the beginning, at the top of the PDF, just to know that the distance between a root and another note, you can visualize across one string, okay? But also take the next step to start to see them across all the strings, okay? So, a flat third from this C note up here, 4th, 5th, a flat 6, right? If I'm playing a blues, I can think of those notes in the chord that are moving back and forth. Here's a root, there's a 5th, right? I've gone up the magic L, there's the 5th, and I know that I'm adding a major 6th onto the chord, right? From the root. There's the minor 6th. Here's the major 6th. Okay, also, that major 6th appears 2 strings up, 1 fret down. Okay, that's really useful up when you're doing 6ths, say on the G and high E string. We shorthand those shapes as guitar players as 6ths because they're 6th intervals away from each other. Very common musical shapes for the guitar that we use all the time. That kind of stuff, okay? So, keep going. Oh, I'll stay in C here. Okay, so this one, same fret but 2 strings up, is your flat 7. And then 1 fret up, 2 strings up is your major 7, and then boom, you get your octave shape, right? And we've seen this before. A lot of times we learn those octave shapes to know where the notes are on the fretboard. It's very helpful. Okay, if you skip a string and go 2 frets up onto the next string, you are a perfect octave away from the root. Okay? So that's sort of what I wanted to connect for you. It's one thing to kind of look at these diagrams and see these interval names that we call the distances, but it's another thing to realize that it's super powerful to know that you can find those intervals across one string, across several strings, away from the root. Okay, and that is a key to sort of understanding scales, which we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to scroll down to the second page of the PDF, and I made up this little chart. Now, this does not contain all possible scales. It only contains some common scales that, some things that I use regularly, and some things that not so regularly, but occasionally. Okay. I've sort of separated it out a little bit. The top 2 are the major scale. I apologize. Spanish. Right on, sir. Thank you. Cool. Excellent. So, the top 2 scales on my chart are, well, let's just focus on the major scale right now. Okay. So another thing I want you to understand about scales is that everything in Western music is built on the major scale. All the other scales that there are some variation of the major scale. And that's the way I like to think of it. I just like to think of just variations of something I know really well. Okay. It's a lot to learn scale after scale after scale after scale. I will say this, as a professional guitar player, and by no means am I like I consider myself a guitar master or anything like that, but the 4 scales I use the most are major, minor, pentatonic minor. Okay? Those ones you got to know cold. The rest of them, you should understand them, kind of get around them a little bit, but they're not as important. Like for 90% of the stuff you're going to do, major, minor, pentatonic, major, and minor. Okay. So let's try and understand the major scale here. What I've done is I've laid out those intervals that make the formula for the major scale. Okay. Those intervals are root. Let me go to C again. Okay. I'm going to go on 1 string. Okay. So root. The next note in the scale is a major 2nd. What is that? That's 2 frets up. Okay, so there you go. And then it's a major 3rd, which is another 2 frets up, right? Because it goes root, minor 2nd, major 2nd, minor 3rd, major 3rd. So we've got the first 3 notes in a major scale. Sounds about right. A do, re, mi. Sounds right? Okay. Then the 4. Perfect 4, 1 fret up from the major 3rd. The perfect 5th is 2 frets up. Okay. Then a major 6th, which is 2 frets up, and a major 7th, which is 2 frets up, and boom, the octave. So, okay. So now we understand that there are 12 notes here from C to shining C right here, right? The octave. There's 12 notes in between. The major scale picks 7 of those. And we can think of those 7 notes as the intervals. There are certain intervals that make up a major scale, okay? And this is what we call them. The root, 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, the octave. I dropped the major because a lot of times you can drop the major and just call it the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7. Okay, you can drop the major because if you don't specify what it is, it's assumed to be the major. Okay, exactly, Joe. That's another way to think of it. Your whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? But we have names for those, okay? And the names come in really handy because we have scale formulas and we have chord formulas. And, you know, when we were talking about a major chord that has a root, major third, and a fifth, you can identify where those notes are in the scale. It's very handy, very useful. We do it all the time, okay? All right. So the pentatonic scale comes along and it gets rid of a couple of notes. So now we're talking about a 5-note scale. And the formula for this is root, 2, 3, 5, 6, root. Okay? Let's go back to the major scale for a second. This is why we learn scale patterns, because it's not exactly efficient to play. I mean, it's useful for understanding and for some things, right? Maybe you want to do something like that, but it's a little bit limiting to just learn it on one string. So that's why we learn the scale patterns. Okay, so now you know where all those intervals are when you learn a scale pattern. Root, second, third, fourth, fifth, major 6, major 7, root. Okay, same thing here. Now we've got a scale pattern over here. Root, major 2nd, major 3rd, 4th, 5th, major 6, major 7th, root. You can keep going. Root, major 2nd, major 3rd, 4th, 5th, major 6, major 7th, root. I mean octave. Okay? There are scale patterns all over the fretboard for these, okay? So you can learn those intervals, okay, in all sorts of positions all over the neck in relation to the root, okay? And those distances across the strings and those locations all just shift, right? They shift when you change the root note, right? Like if I have a C note here, and I'm going to look for a major 6th away from the root. Okay? That's a shape on the fretboard right there. Okay? I'm 1 fret back, 2 strings up from the root. Now if I move to a G, that shape comes with it. So if I want to find a major 6th away from a G note now, it's in the same location relative to the root note. 1 fret down, 2 strings up. Cool? Complicated? Making sense? I hope you're hanging with me on this, okay? Alan, if you change the root, is that a mode? Yes, well, we might have to save the discussion on modes for another time, but yes, basically, that's one way of thinking of the modes, is that if you take the major scale, let's take this pattern. But if I take that exact same pattern and now make the root the 2nd note, you end up with a different mode. Okay, and that, in this case, the 2nd mode is the Dorian mode. That's what I'm assuming. Yeah, Christopher is trying to get clarification on what you meant by that, but I think that Ala mode is the best. I agree, Alex. That's nice. Joe is correct. That's Dorian, right? We'll talk about that. This is in the chart, okay? So let's talk about that a little bit. So now I've got a whole bunch of minor type scales, okay? And there's quite a few more of them because these are sort of common variations of a minor scale. The first one is called the natural minor scale. And it has a different interval formula, a different formula, as you can see. So now, let's say I do it with A. Here's a root. Then the next note is a major 2nd, okay, the 2. So that's still 2 frets away, 2 semitones. but then it has a minor third or a flat third. So that's going to be your pinky 3 frets away, right? Okay. Already it sounds different from the major scale. The major scale had a major third. This one has a minor third. Okay. It still has the perfect fourth and fifth, but then it has a minor sixth and a minor seventh. Okay. So now we can figure out where that is on the fretboard, and boom, you've got a scale pattern for minor, natural minor. Okay. So I encourage you, once you learn some natural minor scale patterns, to, just do some little testing around and seeing where you can find different intervals within that pattern, right? Here's my flat 3. Here's my 5th. Here's my flat 6th, or minor 6th. Here's my minor 7th. Here's my octave. Does 5 on the scale formula chart equal the perfect fifth? Yes, yes. We shorthand it, the 4 and the 5, but they are understood to be the perfect fourth and perfect fifth. Yes, so you're correct, Dree. When will you use that, Alex? Aeolian. Yes, Joe. Another name for the natural minor scale is the Aeolian mode. It's the 6th mode. It turns out it's the 6th mode of the major scale. You don't need to know modes at this point if you do not have a full understanding of major and natural minor and the pentatonics. Okay, focus on those 4 and be really good about them. Then you can branch off and start understanding about the modes and how to use all that kind of stuff. Okay. So when will I use that? I'm not sure what you're asking. When will you use this stuff? As you continue to learn the guitar, we want to learn the fretboard as well as we can. We want to understand when we're learning songs, what is happening, what scales are being used, how a scale is constructed, how it relates to chords, how it relates to the notes that make up the chord. Stephen, yes. Well, I think, try to learn the intervals as best you can, but certainly start with the major scale. Start with the scales first, and just start with the major scale. And even if you learn like a pentatonic scale, that's great too. Okay. We need to know major scale cold. We need to know the minor scale cold, and we need to know the pentatonic scales. Okay. What progression will that sound good? Alex asks. I'm not sure what scale we're talking about. So if you can just let me know what scale you were thinking of, and I can talk about that. Okay. You've mentioned the 4 common scale shapes, and you can just play it anywhere on the fretboard. Should we memorize them? Yeah, we should always try to memorize them. Okay. If you learn the major scale all over the neck, and you learn the minor scale all over the neck, and you learn their relationship to the pentatonic boxes. We're all going to learn pentatonic boxes, right? Any suggestions to practicing this fun? Yes. Here's how you make the practicing this fun. Learn songs. Okay. And as you're learning the songs, just take a minute and try to figure out what scale what key are we in? What scale is being used? What are the chords in this song? What are the notes making up the chords? And what scales do they belong to? Okay. Natural minor just works. Alex, natural minor works in any song that is in a minor key. Okay. So if you are playing any progression in the key of A minor, you can use the A natural minor scale. All those notes should work with the chords. Okay. All right. Yes, and we use as Christopher so elegantly, always more eloquently than I can ever explain. Use the concept of scale degrees or intervals to understand melodies and single note lines. Okay. Because at the end of the day, it's the intervals against the root that create all these different sounds. And as a guitar player, you want to choose and pick different sounds. Okay. Yes, exactly. Okay. Did you say minor key? Don't start without me. Mr. Daniel, welcome back, sir. The black metal music, always with the minor keys. Yes, indeed. Cool. All right, so I'm going through this common scale formulas chart just to kind of go over some stuff. All right, so these scales all utilize different intervals as the formula that make up the scale, and as a result, give you different sounds. You have different colors, right? And depending on the chord progressions you're using, depending on the key you're in, there are there are better choices for a scale, but you can choose a scale just because you like the sound of it, right? Most all songs on Guitar Tricks are chord based, correct? Yeah, there's always an underlying chord. Some that I mean, maybe there's a lot of songs with riffs. Maybe that might not be quite as chord based, but riffs are made up of a combination of chords and single notes. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I would 100% confirm that. Even if you use tremolo pickings, you can use tremolo picking anytime to go through this stuff. In regards to the major scale, what about the formula is different than what you're teaching? Well, what I'm teaching are the names of the intervals. I mean, another way to understand a scale formula is whole step, half step, whole step, half step. That's great. Okay, that's totally fine. But there are names for the notes in the scale, okay? Names for the intervals or the scale degrees, okay? Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. There's no difference. We're just thinking about it in a different way. We're just thinking about it, naming these scale degrees as the intervals that they are, okay? All right. So I've talked about natural minor. Now there are some other scales here to check out that are just little tweaks of the natural minor scale. And if you look at it, for the first one, harmonic minor, for example, is the exact same scale, except the seventh is not a flat seven or a minor seventh. The seventh is a major seventh. So instead of the sound of a natural minor scale, you've got, okay? Okay, has a different sound. This is the whole point of this, is that when you start using these different scales, each of them have a unique, distinct sound. And the reason for that is that you are changing some of the intervals within that scale formula, okay? So natural minor has some scales that are related to it, but they all have a distinct sound. So harmonic minor, you've got a major seven instead of a minor seven. Okay. Natural minor, 100%. Okay. You're going to use natural minor a lot more than harmonic minor. Harmonic minor comes in handy in certain situations. And a lot of times we use these scales for color to give like a different sound, but also we like to highlight chords that are happening underneath. Okay. So if you want to make music, I basically pick one of these scales and play notes out of it. Sure. Absolutely. 100%. Right. I can just say, okay, I'm going to play in harmonic minor now. I just made a melody. Okay. Out of playing harmonic minor. Now, I might want to figure out what chords work under that. And then you go off and start working on it and trying to figure stuff out. Okay. A lot of other times it's in the reverse, right? You've got a chord progression and you want to figure out what to play for melodies on top of the chord progression or soloing, right? So you want to look at the chord progression and try to fit a scale that sits nicely on top of a chord progression. That's sort of the other way is really common as well. It sounds like every note works. Well, right now it sounds like every note works. I'm just sort of giving you different sounds, and they all work because I don't have any other music underneath, right? Excellent, Steve. What if you play A minor with F minor, black metal style? Absolutely. You're changing keys. I love that. I love that stuff. I always love coming down a minor third in minors. Keep in mind, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, but I just love the sound of it. Anyway, black metal, hopefully. Peter, welcome. No worries at all. Brian's been using major, pentatonic major, and minor. Is natural minor really needed? Natural minor and just regular minor, it's the same thing. Exactly the same thing, okay? The full name for it is natural minor, but minor is just minor. It's natural minor. It's exactly the same thing, okay? Now, there's this other scale, melodic minor, right? Which takes harmonic minor and it tweaks one more note, and it makes the major, the sixth, it makes it, instead of minor, it makes it major. So it sounds like this. Again, a different sound, right? Used a lot in jazz, okay? Not so much in rock, pop, and all that kind of stuff. But I included it because it just shows you that if you understand major, if you understand minor, all the other scales are usually just little tweaks, okay? Pentatonic minor, same thing. We got root, minor third, fourth, fifth, minor seventh, octave. So it's the natural minor without two of the notes. We're missing the second and the sixth, okay? Minor sixth, that is. Now, of course, we had a question about the blues. How do we use the blues scale? Now, the blues scale is a cool scale because it adds in a flat 5. So we're actually adding in some chromatic notes here. There it is, MKA Melt. Awesome scale, okay? Bluesy, okay? And so adding in that flat 5, that tritone, which is, remember, if I'm in A, I've got the 4 and the 5. That's the magic L, right? And then right in between there is the tritone, that flat 5 or that sharp 4, sometimes it's called. Okay? Yes, the flat 5 is the same as a diminished 5. Yeah, diminished and augmented are similar word or sort of the same meaning as sharp and flat or major and minor. Sometimes we use augmented and diminished, okay? So more commonly, flat 5 is what you can think of this note as. The flat 5, the blues note, the tritone. Alex, great strategy right there. When you make a mistake, just call it another scale. Call it an exotic scale. Cool. All right, so the blues scale, another great one. And it's really easy to just make that tweak, right? If you know the pentatonic minor, you can add in the flat 5. Just know where that flat 5 is, right between the 4th and the 5th interval, or scale degree, as we sometimes call it. Right? And instant blues, bluesy sound, of course, used all the time in pop, rock, and country. Okay. The sort of bottom chunk that I included. Now, by no means is this the complete list of all modes, because you can get pretty crazy talking about modes, okay? I put down the most commonly used of the modes, And I'm not going to get into too much detail about the modes right now. We're running out of time, and that's a whole other discussion. Stephen, please. I'm not showing off. I'm just trying to get you to hear the sound. All right, I'm trying to show off. Anyway, we've got Dorian, Phrygian, Phrygian dominant, Lydian, and Mixolydian. Okay, so with the exception of Phrygian dominant, which I included there because it's such a cool scale, I'm going to talk about it in a second. Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, and Mixolydian are modes of the major scale. Okay, and Dorian and Phrygian are sort of based off the minor scale or the natural minor scale. Okay, there's just one little tweak that happens. So in the case of Dorian, the sixth becomes major. You take a minor scale and you sharpen the sixth, you get Dorian. Okay, this comes in handy. Let's say we're playing an A Dorian. Alex, good one. I like that. Let's say we're playing an A minor, but we've got a chord progression that has a D major. Well, it turns out the major third of that chord fits Dorian. It's a sharp 6 in relation to A. It's a major 6th against the A. Okay? So so that's why we use these modes sometimes, is that it fits a chord progression better. You're highlighting a chord that's happening underneath that has a note in it that if you tweak just one little thing in a major or minor scale, yeah, you really can highlight that note. Yeah, another one, Santana. Right? It's also with, if you're... I always think of the Doors. That middle section of Light My Fire. It goes between like a A minor 7 to a B minor 7. You could play A minor, but because there's a B minor 7 in there, you've got this note. So... and then he throws in the blues note, but that's Dorian. Okay, because that sharp 6 right there. Okay, so there you go. Phrygian, another cool one. It's a minor scale with a flat 2. Okay, so we're gonna go up to E for this one. So it works well if you're playing like a kind of Metallica thing, you know, like they always kind of did the E chord, which would be the 1 chord, to the flat 2 chord, like an F chord. Right? Here's another cool one, okay? The Phrygian dominant. So it takes the Phrygian scale and it makes the minor third into a major third. And then you get this more Egyptian sounding thing. A lot more exotic sounding. This is the scale that's used in Offspring. What is it? Right? That's Phrygian dominant. If anyone knows Iron Maiden, Power Slave, they use that. Okay? Phrygian dominant has that sort of Egyptian exotic kind of sound. It's really cool. All right, cool. Excellent. Thank you for the kind words. MKA Melt, thank you. Okay, so the final 2 scales in that little chunk at the bottom of this handout are Lydian and Mixolydian, which are the 4th and 5th modes of the major scale. And they are tweaks of the major scale, okay? So as Dorian and Phrygian, you can think of them as minor scales with one note that's sort of changed. you can think of Lydian and Mixolydian as a major scale with just one note tweaked. Okay, so the Lydian replaces the 4 with a sharp 4. Okay, and gives you sort of this sound. Okay, because if I've got an A note in my interval, here's the 4 against it on the B string, perfect fourth. If I just raise it, it's pretty tense by itself. It gives you actually a tritone. You think of it as a sharp 4, but it's enharmonically the same as a flat 5. Okay, so kind of a cool sound, right? Mixolydian is even cooler because it's a major scale that flats the 7. You get a flat 7 or a minor 7th in it. So you get, let's see, in the key of A. Let's go. Stephen, yes, I believe we leave this up on YouTube, so you can cycle back and watch it. Excellent. Jeff, I noticed in your song solo instruction on guitar tricks, you use down picking when you can when playing the guitar solo. Do you base this on what the note value is? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. You use down picking when you can when playing the guitar solo. I don't know. You know what? Usually it's just, if that's, I kind of use whatever picking, the more naturally feeling what I need to do, basically. Hello, from Panama. Rolando, thanks for joining in. Yeah, Jeff, I'm not 100% clear on what your question is, but all I can say is that the picking, I don't think about so much. It's more just about being able to get from point A to point B and play that solo in sort of the most economical way that I can personally with my technical ability, arguably limited technical ability, right? So if you notice that I used a lot of down picking in the solo, yes, maybe a lot of people like to switch to upstrokes just for a different thing. Economy picking, sure. If it's something fast, sometimes you have to go to economy picking just to make it happen. Right, Alan? Cool. I like that. Okay. What do I think about Alex Lifeson? Are you kidding me? I'm Canadian. I was born in Canada, so I love Rush, and I'm a huge Alex Lifeson fan, and I'm happy to report that, well, maybe I shouldn't let the cat out of the bag right now, but we do have some Rush coming on Guitar Tricks. We're filming some Rush songs. I'm very excited, okay? When you made up that melody earlier, you played notes outside of a single scale moving up and down the fretboard. How did it still sound good? I have no idea. I just made it up. I don't know. Oh, I know BTO, Alan. Are you kidding me? Do you know that one? Of course, we all know. I grew up with all the Canadian stuff, man. There you go. Alan, he's got it. All right, Steven, excellent, from Edmonton. Well, there we go. I grew up in Calgary. I was born in Edmonton, though. But I grew up in Calgary. Right on. Thanks for joining, everybody. This has kind of been fun, talking about scales and playing riffs. I love to play riffs, right? Yeah, Alex Lifeson, are you kidding me? Incredible. Love it. I'm a big Rush fan, so. Excellent, Jerry. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And, hopefully we got a little bit something out. I know we kind of got a little bit higher level theory stuff, but you know what? Just keep kicking away at this stuff when it's rolling around in your head, and you'll start to make those little connections. Always, whenever you can, when you learn theory, I'm a big, I always suggest, do what you can do to sort of relate that theory straight to the fretboard. Steve, what skill level do you think the Rush lessons will be at? 11? 11 picks. I'd like to see that. Yeah, Ian, so when you do go past the octave, The names do change. Yeah, you add, add onto it like the minor 9. Yep, you've got the right idea there for sure. Cool. Dree, yes. Any other sessions? So we're here every Friday on YouTube, same time, every Friday. Next Friday, it'll be a guitar workout. So I'll have some tabs and some cool exercises and things to go through. We'll do a lot more playing next week. Okay. So I kind of filled this one up with a bit of theory stuff. So hopefully it's, you don't have to understand it all at once, but try to make those connections and try to relate everything to the fretboard. And because if you can relate it to the fretboard, the more you know about unlocking this guy, the more choices you have, the more music you can make. James, in the key of C, a perfect fourth is 5 semitones up from C. Can I use the description, move up a perfect fourth from the 2 to the 5, which is 5 semitones up? Yeah, I mean, you could, because, yeah, like an interval is a distance between one note to another. So if you're talking about the second note, right, to the 5, that interval, that distance between the second to the 5th is a fourth. Absolutely, 100%. Okay. Yes, Alan, absolutely. So yeah, we've got chords, right? Like the add 9, for example, the C add 9, right? We're adding on a D note, but we're doing it, we've already got a root, major third, 5th, and then here's the octave. So boom, there's the major 9th, add 9. Okay. So that's above the octave. When guitarists make solos, don't they play all sorts of notes outside the same 7 notes in the scale? What about those? Absolutely. You can use what are known as passing notes, chromatic notes. It's all about where you land with when soloing and using scales, right? That's the important thing. The notes in between, particularly if you're a fast player, you can kind of get away with anything, right? You can play all sorts of notes outside the scale, right? But where are you going to land? Where are you going to end that phrase? And that's a lot of time where this comes in handy, okay? Because a lot of times what you want to do is land on a note that highlights the chord that happens to be going underneath. And when I'm saying land on a note, I'm talking about just resolving a phrase or finishing a phrase, that finishing note, okay? A lot of times you want that note to like just coincide directly with whatever chord's happening underneath. And so if you know the notes in the chord underneath, and you know in a scale where to find the notes that are underneath by using intervals, you can land your phrases on notes that target the notes in the chord underneath. And that's what the masters do. And whether or not the masters understand theory like this, or just played and played and played and played and figured it out by ear, which a lot of them do, that's what they are doing. Okay. They are choosing notes for a certain sound that ties in with a chord progression underneath. Excellent, Peter. No problem. You can rewatch this video. It'll be up when we finish it up. I think the guitar solos you can learn in school, but they're also Stelztoff guitars, so don't take any lessons. Absolutely. So it's just about, I always suggest try to always be getting better at theory, because it's sort of a fast track into, working stuff out with your ear and getting better on the instrument. It's a little bit of a fast track if you understand that stuff. You have to work a little bit harder to get everything by ear and become a great player. But I'm not saying that there aren't people that do that. There are plenty of master players out there that are not as strong on the theory, but they actually do kind of know it because they've trained their ear to be able to hear it. And that's the important thing. All right. Can we do a session about phrasing? Perhaps I will take that suggestion for sure. And hopefully we can do something in the future. Peter, thank you. All right. Went a little over time, but I appreciate everyone hanging out. I appreciate all the great questions and participation. This has been awesome. Next Friday, same time, same YouTube channel, the Guitar Tricks YouTube channel. It's the guitar workout next week. So we'll do a lot more playing, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Christopher. Thanks for dropping in. Steve, Dree, thank you so much. Take care.